So today we're going to be making faggots. Now this is a classic British dish, although the exact origins may be slightly disputed depending on where you're from. But one thing's for sure, this is an amazing dish. It's like meatballs on steroids. Now originally it would have been made with offal, but I'm going to be using shin of beef and the tail from the cow as well. Right, my name's Philip. Let's get cooking. Right, so let's get the stock done and dusted first. Now you're going to need to ask your butcher for some beef bones that have been cut down into tennis ball size pieces. You're going to need around 3 to 4 kilos depending on the size of your pan. Now we're going to roast these bones off in an oven that's been preheated to 250 degrees Celsius or 480 degrees Fahrenheit. Halfway during the cook, we're just going to pull them out the oven, give them a quick turn. Now once they're nicely roasted, we're going to leave them to one side and we're going to strain off the beef fat and save it. This is pure gold dust. It's amazing to roast potatoes in or to cook Yorkshire puddings. Now we're going to deglaze the roasting tray. There's lots of flavour here and we want to save it and then get it back into our stock later. So in my stock pot, I've heated a spoonful of the beef fat and I'm going to saute off 2 large white onions that I've sliced. I'm going to cook them until they're golden and then add in 1 sliced carrot and 5 cloves of garlic that have been cut in half. These will be sauteed for a couple of minutes until the carrot and the garlic have softened, and then I'm going to add in half a bottle of red wine and I'm going to reduce that down until the mixture is thick and deep red. Now to the veg, we're going to add the deglazing liquid from before and then the bones, and then we're just going to fill the pan up with cold water. Right, we're going to bring this up to a simmer slowly on the heat. Don't be tempted to crank that heat right up and let this boil. If you do, you're going to end up with a cloudy stock. As it comes up to the simmer, we can skim off any impurities or fat that float to the top of the stock. And then we need to let this cook. Now, 8 hours is perfect, but if you're pushed for time, 6 hours will be okay too. And you can top this up with boiling water during the cook if it's needed. And when you're done, you can use a slotted spoon just to remove as much of the bones and the vegetable as possible. And then we can get that liquid and we can strain it off through a fine sieve. And there's our finished stock. Right, it's the next day for me and my stock has been resting in the fridge overnight. And as you can see, it's really gelatinous. Now try to get the best beef your budget will stretch to. I'm using organic beef, 1.2 kilos or 2.6 pounds of shin and 850 grams or 1.8 pounds of tail. I bought this from Dracoulis Butchers in Athens, and if you're based in Greece or visit Greece, these guys are well worth a visit. They are way more than just a butcher's. Check out their website, I'll leave a link in the description. Now these cuts are perfect for slow cooking. They're packed full of flavour and they'll become beautifully tender while adding another level of flavour to our stock. Heat a heavy base pan on a medium-high temperature. My temp is set to 7 out of 9. And we're going to sear off the outside of the meat to get a deep caramelised surface. Again, lots and lots of flavour. Now we treat our veg in exactly the same way as we did before. I'm going to saute off 2 sliced onions until they're golden. Then I'm going to add in 1 sliced carrot and 5 cloves of garlic that have been cut in half. And once they're soft, we'll add in another half bottle of red wine and reduce that down again, just as we did before, so that it's a little syrupy and really coats the vegetables. Now you're going to need a big pot, either a casserole or a large pan. We're going to add the wine and the veg to the bottom of this and then build up the casserole with the pieces of beef. And then we're going to top it off with the beef stock. Now same as before, super important. Bring this up to a simmer slowly. Don't boil it. Then we can give the top a quick skim. And it's going to cook covered with a lid in an oven that's been preheated to 100 degrees Celsius or 215 degrees Fahrenheit. It's going to cook for about 9 hours, low and slow. And when you hit the 8-hour mark, you can begin checking it to make sure that it's nice and tender. You just want to pick a piece up and gently squeeze it between your fingers. It wants to be nice and soft, but it definitely doesn't want to fall apart on its own. Now when it's ready, don't take the meat straight out of the cooking stock. Leave it in there to cool down to room temperature. Mine's actually going to go in the fridge overnight. Now here you can see how gently it simmers when it's in the oven. There are barely any bubbles breaking the surface, and when I dipped this with my thermopen, the stock temperature was reading 90 degrees Celsius or 195 degrees Fahrenheit during that cook process. So my casserole sat in the fridge overnight, and as you can see it's really well set, which means there's lots of gelatine in there. So now we need to remove the meat from the bones. Now a simple set of rules: anything that feels soft and juicy goes into the bowl, and anything that doesn't gets deposited into that rubbish bag. And yes, I know I'm not wearing gloves, and unless I'm either cooking in a professional kitchen that demands it, or the task really requires it, I ain't gonna wear them. My hands are clean and I want as much tactile contact with that food as possible. And I have zero interest in polluting our planet any further with unnecessary rubbish, when I can just make sure my hands are clean. And sadly, I don't think Brian's going to get to hear that. Right, so here's the meat, and I've just run a knife through it just to make it a little bit finer. I've also sautéed off half a sliced white onion, a diced carrot and 2 cloves of garlic, which I'm going to add to the meat as well. The liquid that the meat cooked in has also been strained again and reheated. And I'll add a couple of spoons of this to the meat mix as well, season it with salt and pepper, and then taste it to check it's seasoned correctly. Now I'm going to use caul fat to wrap these up, and your butcher can help you source this. Now you can shape them freehand, but using a ramekin makes sure they all end up a pretty uniform shape and size. And when you fill them up, you can make sure that mix is packed in nice and tight, but not so tight that it forces out all of the juices. And then you can just fold that caul fat over the top and trim off any excess. This mix actually made 6 portions for me, but don't forget to check out the description for all the weights and the measurements. Now don't use a pan that's too big, make sure they're all nestled quite tightly together, fill the pan up halfway with the stock, and then bake it in an oven that's preheated to 180 degrees Celsius or 355 degrees Fahrenheit for 40 minutes. And then you'll just want to pull them out and baste them every 10 minutes with some of that cooking liquid. Now when they're cooked properly, the caul fat will have cooked into a soft, translucent layer that melts in the mouth. I've reduced the leftover stock down to make a rich gravy, and I love these with mashed potatoes. The faggot is an amazing juicy meatball, the sauce gives a real beefy kick, and the mash, well, the mash is just perfect for mopping everything up. So I reckon that's about the juiciest, meatiest meatball you can possibly get. Now, if you give this a go, or you've got any questions or any comments about the video, then do let me know down below. But for now, I just want to say a huge thank you for watching. I'll see you again very soon. Stay tuned.